Steaming into existence with the birth of the universe, the void is a manifestation of the unknowable nothingness that lies beyond. It is a force of insatiable hunger, waiting through the eons until its masters, the mysterious Watchers, mark the final time of undoing. To be a mortal touched by this power is to suffer an agonizing glimpse of eternal unreality, enough to shatter even the strongest mind. Denizens of the void realm itself are construct creatures, often of only limited sentience, but tasked with a singular purpose: to usher in total oblivion across Runeterra. Bel'Veth, the Empress of the Void. Fascinated by the world of existence and eager to create one for herself, Bel'Veth is like a dark cancer that has metastasized within the heart of the void, for which all of Runeterra will be consumed and rebuilt in her own twisted image. She hungers for new experiences, memories, and concepts in vast amounts, devouring whole cities and their populations before repurposing the information into a sprawling alien landscape known as the Lavender Sea. Yet even the void is not safe from her voracity, as she spreads within it like a primordial ocean, forcing all before her to submit to her world of want or be destroyed. Though Bel'Veth is new to Runeterra, her birth is untold millennia in the making, the end result of an allergic reaction between the void and a nascent reality. The once pristine dimension of peaceful nothingness was irrevocably shattered when existence came into being, and forcefully individualized void entities lashed out for eons in an attempt to defend themselves from the shock and pain. Erasing everything they consumed, they were named by virtue of what they left behind, a void. But the beings within were changed each time they touched the world, mutating from their once perfect forms into hedonistic, violent animals. So too did the void change with them. After every battle, every incursion, something more sinister grew deep within a hidden womb inside the darkest recesses of the void-born tunnels. Buildings, sunlight, proto-humanoid limbs reaching toward nothing, a jigsaw puzzle where none of the pieces fit. The void had taken a new, hideous shape. In time, fueled both by humans opening rifts for war and the Watchers attempting to invade the Frelzord, this blasphemous pocket of uncreation grew to embrace the opposites of the old void: desire, want, and need. Soon enough, it craved a leader, someone or something who could write a horrific new chapter in the worlds above and below. A leader who could interface with these humans, tell them of what was to come, and harvest their emotions and memories as they fought a bitter, fruitless war until the last fires of civilization died and a new era spawned. This leader is Bel'Veth, a terrifying empress born from the combined memories, experiences, and emotions of an entire devoured port city and its outlying ocean. Bel'Veth's mind contains millions of years of perfectly preserved knowledge, giving her near omniscience as she prepares to destroy both Runeterra and the domain of her progenitors, the Watchers. To those lucky enough to be of strategic value to her, she does not lie, ask questions, nor obfuscate the truth. She simply states the nature of things, for with victory all but assured, thanks to the very nature of the void itself, there is no need to say anything more. And to those who displease her, they will find her human form to be merely adaptational, nerve endings, muscles, and eye stalks, as she unfurls her titanic wings to reveal her true monstrous figure. Ironically, the ancient Shurimans had a word for such a concept, loosely translated to God of Oblivion. It was a tribal myth of a remorseless deity who would erase all things without hatred, replacing them with itself. They named the city of Bel'Veth after it, though the true meaning was lost after many hundreds of years. Lost to all, perhaps, save for the creature that city has become, Cho'Gath, the terror of the void. There is a place between dimensions, between worlds. To some it is known as the outside, to others it is the unknown. To those that truly know, however, it is called the void. Despite its name, the void is not an empty place, but rather the home of unspeakable things, horrors not meant for minds of men. Cho'Gath is a creature born of the void, a thing whose true nature is so awful most will not speak its name. Its fellows have been poking at the walls that divide dimensions for a crack, a way into Runeterra, where they can visit their own personal paradise of horror upon a world. They are called the Voidborn, creatures so ancient and terrible that they had been removed from history altogether. It is rumored that the Voidborn command vast armies of unspeakable creatures on other worlds, that they were once driven from Runeterra by powerful magic lost to antiquity. If such tales are true, then the rumors that follow must be equally true, that one day the Voidborn will return. Even now, something dark stirs in Icathia. Cho'Gath, an alien creature of malice and violence, causes all but the most I fear. Where is this Mayan darkness? Where is this pagan? Replied Cho'Gath. It's me, darkness. Cho'Gath even appears to feed on his mind, but the creation is not normal. Worse yet, the creature is intelligent, perhaps greatly so, hinting at the sentient horror of the void. Kaisa, daughter of the void. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about the fearless hunter of the void known as Kaisa is how unremarkably her life began. She did not descend from tribal warriors hardened by generations of battle, nor was she summoned from distant lands to fight the unknowable menace lurking beneath Shurima. Rather, she was just an ordinary girl, born to loving parents who called the unforgiving southern deserts their home. This was where she would spend her days playing with friends, and her nights dreaming about her place in the world. In her 10th summer, the young girl Kaisa's destiny would be changed forever. Had she been older, she might have noticed more of the unusual events that had begun to unfold in the villages. Every day, her mother urged her stay home, for fear of strangers wandering the land, demanding tribute to dark powers below. Kaisa and her friends did not believe it, until one evening they came upon a pen of sacrificial goats bought from nomad herdsmen. Using the knife her father had given her on her 8th birthday, she cut their tethers and set the animals free into a nearby canyon. It seemed like a harmless prank, until the unthinkable happened. The ground began to quake, flashes of light scorched the sky, and the children ran for their lives. The void had been awakened. A great rift split the bedrock, swallowing up Kaisa's village and everyone in it, leaving nothing behind but sand pierced with twisted columns as black as night. Kaisa regained consciousness to find herself trapped underground. She was filled with crippling fear, but there was still hope. She could hear the faint cries of other survivors. They called out to each other feebly, repeating their names one by one like a mantra. Sadly, by the 3rd day, hers was the only voice left. Her friends and family were all gone. She was alone in the darkness. It was only when all seemed lost that she saw the light. She followed it down. Along the way, she found meager sustenance. Amid the debris left by the collapse were ragged water skins, rotting peaches, anything to keep starvation at bay. But, eventually, Kaisa's hunger was replaced by fear once again. She found herself in a vast cavern, illuminated by an otherworldly purplish glow, and she could see she was no longer alone. Skittering creatures swarmed in the depths. The first that came for Kaisa was no bigger than her, and she clutched her knife in both hands, ready to defend herself. The voidling horror knocked her to the ground, but she drove the blade into its pulsing heart, and the two of them tumbled deeper into the abyss. The creature was seemingly dead, but its unnatural skin had taken hold upon the flesh of her arm. The dark shell tingled, but was hard as steel to the touch. In a panic, Kaisa broke her knife trying to remove it. But when the larger beasts came, she used it as a shield to make her escape. Soon enough, she realized the shell was becoming part of her. As her daily struggle to survive drew out into years, this second skin grew with her, and so too did her resolve. Now she had more than hope. She had a plan. Fight hard, stay alive, find a way back. She was transformed, from frightened girl to fearless survivor, from prey to predator. For almost a decade, she has lived between two worlds in an attempt to keep them apart. The Void hungers to consume not only the scattered villages of Shurima, but the whole of Runeterra. She will not allow that to happen. Though she is slaying countless Void constructs, she understands that many of the people she protects would see her as a monster herself. Indeed, her name has begun to pass into legend, an echo of the ancient horrors of doomed Icafia. No longer Kaisa, but Kassadin, the Voidwalker. Kassadin started life as a lowly offcast, walking the harsh sands of the Rek'Sai alongside merchant caravans to draw predators away from their more valuable goods. He survived many of these treks across the desert, and began to serve less as bait and more as a guide. The foreign tongues that sought his talents, Kassadin, or whom does the desert know, often slurred their shoremen, and so he became fondly known as Kassadin in the back alleys and markets of Bel'Veth. He spent many years exploring the ancient ruins of his homeland, making his employers exceedingly wealthy. But it wasn't until a dig near Zarima that he found a treasure of his own. He fell in love with a woman from one of the desert tribes. With his wife and newborn daughter, Kassadin settled in a small village in the rocky canyons to the south. He was on the road often, his work sometimes requiring him to accompany particularly valuable relics to some faraway sponsor. But no matter where his travels took him, Kassadin would always return with exciting tales from the world beyond. Journeying home from distant Piltover, Kassadin and his fellow Caravaneers were watering their beasts at an oasis when they encountered the first terrified survivors stumbling out of the desert. They spoke of the disaster that had claimed their homes, as if the maw of the underworld itself had opened up to devour them. They had barely escaped with their lives. Fearing for his own family's safety, Kassadin left the others behind, riding hard, driving his mount almost to exhaustion. When he finally reached the place where his village had once stood, he found only shifting sand and rubble. He clawed at the debris until his hands bled, screaming out his wife and daughter's names, though no answer came. Days later, Kassadin's companions caught up to him, now just a broken and empty man weeping beneath the scorching sun. They dragged him back to Zarima, but Kassadin would go no further. For years, he tried to drown his grief, reduced to little more than a vagrant, until word reached town of the Prophet. Whispers of unspeakable horrors that dwelt beneath the earth, and of sacrifices made in their name, chilled Kassadin to the bone. He knew well the legends of old Icafia, and the fate that befell that accursed place. If the Void had been deliberately drawn toward Shurima once more, then it had likely been the death of his entire village, and countless more besides. He also knew there were few, if any, who could stand against it. In that moment, Kassadin swore that he would avenge his wife and daughter by destroying this insidious prophet and the source of his abyssal power. He was a man who had made his living by finding safe paths through the most dangerous places, and resolved to arm himself with the most arcane and esoteric weapons ever known in Valoran, fused with Zonite ingenuity, and blessed by Ionian spirit healers. He called in every favor he could, from scholars of antiquities to common smugglers, for their help in acquiring what he sought. Many called him a madman, believing this the last time they would ever see their old friend alive. Kassadin nearly thanked them for their concern and bid them farewell. He would face the Void alone. Last of all, he stole the infamous nether blade of Horok, the sword that had slain 1,000 deceivers in the latter days of the Empire. He could feel the cold pull of oblivion in its edge, but no longer had any regard for his own mortality, and nothing of his old life left to lose. Disguised in the robes of a pilgrim, more than a decade since he had last set foot anywhere near that desolate land, Kassadin made his way into Icafia. He would go where no man was ever meant to walk. He would have his vengeance, even if it killed him. Kha'Zix, the Void Reaver. A vicious void predator, Kha'Zix infiltrated Valoran to devour the land's most promising creatures. With each kill, he absorbs his prey's strength, evolving to grow more powerful. Kha'Zix hungers most to conquer and consume Rengar, the one beast he considers his equal. When Kha'Zix crossed over into this world, he was fragile and ravenous. The animals he first encountered were too small to fuel the rapid evolution he craved. Kha'Zix focused his hunger on the most dangerous creatures he could find, risking his life to satisfy his need. With each kill he feasted and changed, becoming a stronger, faster predator. Kha'Zix soon chased his prey with unrestrained aggression, believing he was unstoppable. One day, while savoring a fresh kill, the predator became the prey. From cover, a creature pounced in a blur of fangs and steel, tackling him to the ground. It roared in his face, slashing and clawing, and Kha'Zix felt his blood spill for the first time. Screeching in fury, he sliced at the brute's eye, driving it back. They fought from sunset to sunrise. Finally, near death, they reluctantly separated. As his wounds closed, Kha'Zix burned with anticipation at the idea of devouring one who could match the void's strength. He resumed his search for powerful prey with renewed vigor. Someday, Kha'Zix will feast on Rengar, Palm, the mouth of the abyss. When the prophet Malzahar was reborn in Icathia, he was led there by an ominous voice which thereby anchored itself to his psyche. From within, this voice bestowed upon him terrible purpose, and though Malzahar was no longer tormented by its call, the voice did not cease its unrelenting summons. This baleful beacon's gentle flicker, now fastened to Runeterra, drew forth a putrid beast that ambled across a threshold it did not understand, widening a fissure between the spaces which were never meant to meet. There amongst the haunting ruins of Icathia, Kog'Maw manifested in Valoran with unsettling curiosity. The spark which led him to Runeterra teased him still, urging him gently towards Malzahar. It also encouraged him to familiarize himself with his new environment, to the stark horror of everything he encountered on his journey. The enchanting colors and aromas of Runeterra intoxicated Kog'Maw, and he explored the fruits of the strange world the only way he knew how, by devouring them. At first he sampled only the wild flora and fauna he happened across. As he traversed the parched Tempest Flats, however, he came upon a tribe of nomads. Seemingly unhampered by conventional rules of physics, Kog'Maw consumed every nomad and any obstacles they put in his way, amounting to many times his own mass and volume. The most composed of his victims may have had time to wonder if this was due to the caustic enzymes which stung the ground as they dripped from his gaping mouth, although such musings were abruptly concluded. Even this feeding frenzy did nothing to satiate Kog'Maw's appetite. His swathe of destruction continues still, as he is inexorably drawn towards Malzahar. What happens when he finds him is anyone's guess. Malzahar, the prophet of the void. Beneath the glare of the Sherman sun, there have always been those blessed with the power of foresight. The only son of aging trinket peddlers, Malzahar did not realize his gift until his parents had already succumbed to a wasting sickness, leaving the young, traumatized boy to fend for himself on the city streets of Amakra. He read fortunes in the gutter for a coin or scraps of bread. As his auguries proved more and more accurate, his reputation grew. He used his second sight to predict who a curious cameleer might marry, or where throwing daggers would land in games of chance at the bazaar. Soon, he began to receive patrons dressed not in dirtied sandals, but jeweled slippers. However, for all this, Malzahar could never see his own destiny. His future was hidden. Increasingly disillusioned with his success, he noted the common disparities of wealth and witnessed those unhappy with their lives acting out in spiteful violence against one another. It was apparent to him that people were bound up in a never-ending cycle of pain, often of their own making, and no hopeful prophecy seemed able to break it. Malzahar himself soon felt nothing but a sense of emptiness, finally relinquishing his mortal possessions and leaving Amakra for good. For years, he roamed the land, from the trackless wastes of the Lesser Sai to the ruins of old Shurima. By distancing himself from others, he was alone with his thoughts at last. He divined not just how callous people could be, but also how corrupt the world might yet become. Feverish visions began to plague his waking hours, along with otherworldly whispers of war and strife and endless suffering. he wandered far, until the sands turned to salt. He could not know that he had arrived in Icathia, a lost city ravaged in the wars of a bygone age. There, gazing into the depths of a ragged abyss, Malzahar opened his unsteady mind, desperate for understanding. And the void answered. That would have been the end of any other tale, and yet somehow Malzahar endured. What lay in the darkness below brushed against the soul of the broken seer, only for an instant, and yet its strange and unknowable energies saturated his mind completely. The lone figure that eventually strode out of Icathia was no longer just a man, but something greater. Malzahar had seen in the abyss an end to all the suffering he had witnessed in his mortal lifetime. He realized the future he had believed hidden from him all this time was in fact a vision of his true calling, to accelerate the world toward inevitable oblivion. He had to return to the people and spread word of the holy nothingness that would gladly embrace them, the willing and non-believers alike. He would become the herald of the world's salvation. Among the nomads of the deep desert, he found his first disciples. Before their astonished eyes, he used his new void-given powers to rend the very earth itself, summoning chittering, nightmarish creatures to carry away any who dared to deny him. Within a matter of months, strange rumors began to travel with the merchant caravans. Rumors of men and women gladly sacrificing themselves to unseen powers, and of powerful quakes opening up the bedrock of Shurima in new fault lines hundreds of miles long. In the years since, Malzahar's legend has spread even to the northern ports. As followers of the Prophet grow in number, nearby settlers are said to experience malefic visions grasping at their hearts, and fear gives rise to superstition. Even the hardy villagers of the far wastes now make offerings of livestock to appease the voidling creatures below. Little do they know, this only helps Malzahar in shepherding the coming of the end. Rek'Sai, the void borrower. The largest and fiercest of her species, Rek'Sai is a merciless predator that tunnels through the earth to ambush and devour her prey. Her insatiable hunger has laid waste to entire regions of the once great Sherman Empire. Merchants, traders, and armed caravans will go hundreds of miles out of their way to avoid these vast areas, though cunning bandits have been known to lure the unwary into her killing grounds. Once Rek'Sai detects you, your fate is sealed. There is no hope of escape. She is death from below the sand. Vel'Koz, the Eye of the Void. To truly understand the horror that is Vel'Koz, one must first know of the Watchers and how they were blinded to the mortal realm. Beyond the material plane, outside and somehow below it, lies the unknowable abyss. It is the realm of the void, where no mortal or mortal creature may ever walk. It is not necessary to know how such a place ever came to be, nor why, only that it did. The void is eternal. The void consumes all. In that place, in the cold, endless dark, all is equal and empty. For timeless eons, there was purity in that fact. There was peace, if such a term could have any meaning there. Then, something changed. Not in the void realm, but elsewhere. It was existence. It was something, where before there had been nothing, and its mere presence scrapped against the vast, cold, formless entities that drifted in the blackness. Before this, they had not even been fully aware of their own sentience, and yet now they knew that they could not tolerate the presence of this other place, this other realm of mercurial, overwhelming creation. The entities watched. They scrutinized. And soon enough, the Watchers found themselves being scrutinized in return. The tiny mortal minds that reached out to them were insignificant, little more than fleeting motes of light at the very edges of the abyss. Yet, in them, the Watchers saw a chance to invade the material realm, to destroy it, to silence the intolerable pulsing of reality beyond the void. The boldest of them tore open the veil and hurled themselves upward. only to be horribly disoriented by the sudden shift between the abyss and the corporeal, linear nature of reality. In an instant, there was time and heat and pain. Then, there was only cold. The way was shut, and dozens of the Watchers were trapped in the liminal space between two realms, frozen in the moment of transition. Those that remained in the void recoiled. They had no concept of what had happened, yet they knew they had been betrayed. And so, they adapted. Reaching into the material realm, the Watchers took from the crude matter that comprised it, shaping, corrupting, and imbuing it with consciousness. These constructs were the first of the Voidborn, and would be their master's eyes and ears, sent forth into the nightmare of existence to watch, listen, and learn. Among them, one stands apart, as perhaps the oldest surviving Voidborn, certainly existing the longest outside of the Abyss. He has been known by countless names to those unfortunate enough to encounter him. Thousands of years before Ikathia unleashed the Void in battle, the primitive cultures of Shurima feared the devil Vel'Koz, who crept forth from the underworld to steal the dreams of wiser men. Though his name has no literal translation in the modern tongue, it equates roughly as to understand by unmaking. His insatiable hunger for knowledge has led Vel'Koz across the world, to its highest peaks and darkest depths. Cunning and methodical, he has quietly watched entire civilizations rise, stagnate, and decay, spent centuries combing the ocean floor for its secrets, even scrying the movements of the stars in the heavens above him. He carries all of this knowledge back to the great rifts in the fabric of Runeterra, so that the Watchers might know what he knows, and will annihilate, without hesitation, any mortal who stands in his path. For the Void is eternal, and it will consume us all.